Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Ever wonder how we went from farming fields to building skyscrapers? How did your great-great-grandparents' paychecks compare to yours? Today, we're diving deep into one of the biggest economic shifts in human history, the Industrial Revolution, and how it completely rewired our wages and living standards. Before the 18th century, life for most people was, well, pretty stagnant. Economies were based on agriculture, and for centuries, wages barely budged. If there was any extra wealth, it usually went into feeding a growing population or into the pockets of the land-owning elite. Think of it like this: for the average person, economic growth was a flat line. Applying the modern concept of wages is even tricky, since you had systems like feudalism and, in places like the United States, the horrific institution of slave labor, which paid no wages at all. Some historians argue that real wages in Britain showed almost no growth before 1800. Any extra productivity didn't necessarily mean a better life. It often just meant more mouths to feed. Then everything changed. Starting in Britain, a wave of innovation swept the world. The steam engine, the spinning jenny, these weren't just new gadgets. They were game changers that harnessed energy in incredible new ways. This was the Industrial Revolution. It pulled economies away from agriculture and towards factories and mass production. At the same time, the enclosure movement in Britain was fencing off common lands that people used for grazing animals and growing food. This pushed a flood of workers from the countryside into the rapidly growing cities, creating a massive new labor force for the factories. For the first time, wage labor became the norm for millions. But this transition wasn't exactly smooth. Working conditions were often terrible, leading to the rise of labor movements fighting for basic rights. Industrialization wasn't just a British thing. It spread like wildfire. It crossed the Atlantic to the United States, then to Western Europe, Latin America, and Asia. So the big question, did people get richer? In the long run, absolutely. One study looking at Britain from 1760 to 1914 found the impact on wages was indisputably favorable. Since 1800, Western Europe and North America have seen staggering cumulative growth, as much as 1,500%. But here's the twist: it wasn't an overnight miracle. In the early decades of industrialization, many historians believe wages for the average worker actually stagnated. Think about it. While new technologies were boosting productivity, the benefits didn't immediately trickle down. The famous historian Emma Griffin points out that while we often focus on real wages, there are many other ways to measure living standards. Things like child mortality, nutrition, and how intensely people had to work. She argues that during the early period, life for many people actually got worse in these other areas. Even if family incomes eventually rose, industrialization created a society that was far more complex and, crucially, far more unequal than the one it replaced. So if productivity was going up, why weren't wages keeping pace? This is a super important point that's still relevant today. The connection between productivity and pay isn't automatic. It's all about bargaining power. In the early industrial era, individual workers had very little power against massive factory owners. This allowed employers to keep a larger share of the profits. We see echoes of this today, where factors like the decline of unions and the immense power of large corporations can create a gap between how much value workers create and how much they repaid. A 2021 study from the Economic Policy Institute showed a clear split between productivity and typical worker pay in the US, blaming policy choices for the growing gap. This brings us to one of the biggest legacies of industrialization: income inequality. It wasn't just that factories created a few super-rich owners. The very structure of the economy was changing. Wealth became concentrated in the hands of those who owned the capital, the factories, the machines, the land. Protections that existed for labor in the medieval period were dismantled and replaced with laws that favored property rights. Historian Walter Rickbosch found that inequality was already rising before industrialization, but that this period supercharged the trend. From the late Middle Ages to the end of the 19th century, the gap between the rich and the poor just kept climbing. And this inequality didn't just stay within countries. It went global. The first nations to industrialize got a massive head start, creating a world of developed and developing nations. Today, countries trying to catch up face huge hurdles. They often lack the local capital that early industrializers had, making them dependent on foreign investment, which can lead to its own set of problems. Plus, there's the environmental cost. The Industrial Revolution was powered by fossil fuels like coal and oil. This kick-started the climate crisis we're dealing with today. As countries in East Asia industrialized more recently, they faced severe air pollution, deforestation, and other environmental nightmares. Now, the challenge for developing nations is to grow their economies without repeating these mistakes, focusing on clean energy instead. So, was industrialization good or bad? It's not a simple answer. It was both. On the one hand, it brought incredible economic growth, life-changing innovations, and social transformations that built the modern world. On the other hand, it came with a dark side, terrible working conditions, massive pollution, and a dramatic increase in inequality that we are still grappling with. Today, many of the first industrial nations are now called post-industrial. Manufacturing has shifted to less developed countries, where wages and living standards are still vastly lower. The world is a global, interconnected economy, but it's also a deeply unequal one, a direct legacy of this revolutionary period. Understanding this history is crucial because the same dynamics of technology, labor, and power are still shaping our paychecks and our planet. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into how our world works. Drop your comments below. See you in the next video.